vision for America is to be more like Europe, okay? The more bigger government, more equality. The theme of Europe in recent decades really is equality. The basic theme of America has always been liberty first, and we are willing to sacrifice some equality in order to have a greater freedom. And we see, at least I see Europe as being willing to sacrifice some freedom in order to have the greater equality. And so I think the Democratic Party has moved more in the direction of social democracy, and the Republican Party today is moving more to the right, more in the direction of emphasizing the opposite of Europe, okay? Less government, less subsidies of the big corporations and farmers and the unions and all those groups. More emphasis on, less emphasis on government power, because if you have big government, by definition, you have more power. You have less government, you have less power. And that's really what a lot of the Tea Party movement is about. It's not really Republican, or the main preoccupation really is the character of the government. And I'm in a much more sympathy today with those views. Over the course of time, I obviously changed my views from Marxism to liberalism, classic, and then to what's today. Classic liberalism today really is, in America, what we call conservatism, because the liberalism of let's say, the John Kennedy, et cetera, really has become the conservatism of today, because the Democratic Party and the liberals, much of the liberal Americans have moved more to the left. So there's a bigger gap, I think, between the two parties today because of this movement. Now, of course, in a way, it's not such a good time to want to look to Europe because of the crisis in Europe, and people are beginning to see the price that Europe has paid for the debts and the welfare and all of that. So it will be interesting to see what the impact has on the coming election, right, which is going to be very, very important, in my opinion.
And talking of freedom, there is difference from New York, West Coast, East Coast, and West Coast. I mean, Los Angeles welcomed you, do you remember, as a very full of opportunity city?
Yes, but I think almost every American city is full of opportunity. It was just by chance, hazah, that I came to Los Angeles. But it is true that in Los Angeles you can lose yourself. You come here, many people, they come from some other part of the United States or from foreign countries. They don't have the ties, the family, the tradition. They feel at least a greater sense of freedom. But the ability to come and prosper and try to pursue your dream, I think you can do that almost anywhere in America. And take my example, and also mostly of the Jewish people who came to America, like my father and so many others, and we lived so poorly in the slums, etc. And now we're one of the most prosperous communities in America. And that's the tradition. That's the Japanese that came that way, the Chinese, the Koreans, and the Germans, the English, the Scotch, whoever came. And also, people don't know that, but that is the pattern that the Latinos are also following. They come from Mexico or other countries, very poor, and they don't speak English, like in my family. And mostly, and the children go to school, and then they move into the middle class. And eventually, they are prospering like other Americans. The difference is that always there are more poor immigrants coming. So we always, in the other situations like with the Jews and the Italians and others, they came at a certain time, and then the immigration stopped. So they moved up the economic ladder, mostly. With immigrants from Mexico and some other countries, it's continuous. So there's always a layer that's starting out that's poor, etc. But anyway, I believe that if they stay and work, they will also achieve what they want. It's people sometimes in academic life, for sure, among intellectuals and journalists, they make fun of the American dream and American exceptionalism and American patriotism and those kinds of ideas. For myself, I don't make fun of them. I think they're very important ideas. I think there's been a great truth to those ideas. Millions and millions of people have come from other countries and lived here in freedom and comfort. And I think that's still true today, and I value that tremendously. So I'm not in accord with most of my friends who disagree with me, have a very different attitude, but that's those are my thoughts and my experience.
How many songs do you have, and are these thinking that you say to your songs?
My son, well, my eldest son is not so interested in politics. My younger son is very interested. He disagrees with me completely. My daughter also is not so interested in politics, but she's more, I would say, in the middle. So couple of elections ago, how we all voted differently. Okay, I voted for Bush, and my three children each voted differently. The eldest one voted for Bush, the daughter voted for Kerry, and my son voted for Nader. So all three children, each one voted for a different candidate. So we don't agree. Because so many of my friends from my days as radical and more liberal, so I still have all these friends, but I've changed in my views more than they have. They're still more in the views that they had years ago.
And this city, it's maybe quite a strange question, but there are a lot of differences.
Yes.
For someone, it could be and it is, I think, the city of angels. For others, more of evil, you know. And what do you think? From your side,
See.
from you say we talk with Sergio too. From
Right.
Show business is. You see more angels or more evils?
I think LA is great. I love Los Angeles. I think Los Angeles is a tremendous opportunity. And it's a very rich city. Also, there's many poor people. Most of those, or certainly many of those poor people, they're not always going to be poor. There's a tremendous opportunity, and it's a very diverse city. People think of Hollywood, etc., but you have major universities, you have intellectual life and museums and concerts. I mean, you can find anything in Los Angeles, any way you want to live. It's much newer, so it doesn't have so many of the traditions, even of New York or Boston, etc., which is what a lot of people like. In this kind of freedom, you have all kind of strange things. People can be bad, they can be good. You know, it depends on what they bring in their character to Los Angeles. It's true, it's very tempting because of the freedom. The price of freedom is that a lot of temptation to do bad things, to cheat, to lie and steal and all of those things, of course. But I would say overall, the people that complain about Los Angeles, but they stay in Los Angeles, okay? Over the years, New Yorkers always, they look down on Los Angeles. But then when they come to Los Angeles, and if they stay 1 year, if they stay a few days, a few weeks, okay. Very superficial, they go back and they make fun, okay. But if they stay and they live here for 1 year, then they never leave. So Los Angeles is full of New Yorkers now because it's a good life pretty much in LA, and there's a lot of opportunity if you want to get an education and if you have the values that you can get ahead. Yet, of course today now we have a lot of problems in California, but a lot of the problems in California have to do with the government in California, which is very full of regulations, very high taxes, and it's more like, it's becoming more like Europe. California is more that way. And in my opinion, it's suffering the same kinds of problems, unemployment, and a lack of opportunity, businesses moving from California to Texas because they can do better business there and not so many restrictions and taxes are lower, etc. So we're losing a lot of employment. This is a great state. This is an incredible state. And I hope that we learn some lessons and the direction will change, but I don't see that, frankly. I think maybe it has to get much worse before it gets better.
Los Angeles changed a lot in the last few years. Some crises you can see in the avenidas too, maybe shops and
yeah, yes, but it's so dynamic that I was noticing just walking down the street with you the other day. There were so many shops that had closed, but now a lot of them, they have a new business. People, especially now when they're losing their jobs, they're thinking, well, maybe this is the time for me to go into business for myself. And so you have an interesting phenomenon now of people opening up little businesses because they don't see a future in their job or profession or whatever they were doing before because they're not hiring. And so they're trying to, and of course this is a big engine for the American economy, small business. Most employment, new employment is in small business. So you have a lot of that. And I noticed that was interesting to see all those new stores and cafes, etc., opening up in the area. So we'll see.
Where are your favorites places, your heart places where you go?
Yes, well, I like to walk along the promenade, not the promenade, the Palisades in Santa Monica and look over the water, over the beach, just to walk and sit and daydream. And I love to go to the Getty Villa in Malibu. This is the reproduction of a villa in Herculaneum that John Paul Getty built. Was the original Getty Museum. Now there's a very big one in Brentwood. But the original one, which is the villa overlooking the sea like it was in that area of Italia. And so they have the, what did I call them? The Greek statues and the Roman antiquities. So now it's just the antiquities, and it's been remodeled. It has a little Greek theater. It's just a wonderful place. A secret of wonderful place of Los Angeles is the sculpture garden at the University of California.